Good evening. I would like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Matthew Mertens. He is from Troop 391, and he is here for his citizenship badge and his communications badge. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all rise, please?
I pledge allegiance
and to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know, right? It's kind of shocking.
Thanks, Matt.
Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Bussino?
Here.
Trustee Krasinski?
Here.
Trustee Nevers?
Present.
Trustee Smith?
Here.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Dunn?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the agenda items. We have some add-ons.
Yes, Madam Supervisor. On the consent agenda, item D2 is a proposed add-on, request to approve easement agreement 2020 Highway Gap Closure Program, parcel number 08174511014. Also D3, proposed add-on, request to approve partial site development bond release for the park at Legacy Estates Phase 3. E2, proposed add-on and clerical correction. This item should read, request for personal leave of absence for employee number 2413, not 1703, and the leave of absence from August 5th, 2019 through August 9th, 2019. On the irregular agenda, we have 11A, proposed add-on, request permission to execute cost-sharing agreement for design and construction costs with Macomb County Department of Roads for 21 Mile Road Center Turn Lane Extension west of Card Road. Item 16, proposed add-on, request to purchase new registration software. Also a request to move item 7, presentation before public comments to allow Firefighter Warne to return to duty as soon as possible. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Posey.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the amended agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the bills. As usual, there are 2 bill runs.
Yes,
If you
Madam
wish
Chair.
an item removed, please indicate so at this time.
Yes, I'm a little quick there. If there are no issues with the bill runs, I move that we approve both.
Motion by Ms. Nevers.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Bussino to approve both bill runs. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have approval of the previous meeting minutes. Those would be from July 10th, 2019. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from July the 10th, 2019 as presented.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the previous meeting minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Thank you. Now we are going to move on to the consent agenda items. If anyone wishes an item removed, please indicate so at this time.
Hearing none, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Posey.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. We have been asked to move number 7 up before public comments. So this is a presentation by Senator McDonald in recognition of firefighter Joseph Warne.
Let it be known that it is a strong sense of admiration for all the sacrifices that Joe Warne has made on behalf of the people of Michigan during his 10 years as a firefighter that we recognize his many accomplishments. Joe's work is commendable and deserving of praise, and his drive to serve goes well beyond his duties. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to honor and thank Joe Warne for his passion to help and protect others. May Joe know of our gratitude and best wishes for continued success in the years to come. On behalf of the state of Michigan, myself, Jeff Urich, and Steve Marino.
If Joe could come up here. As a former firefighter myself, it's always an honor to present to a firefighter for their efforts.
Thank you. We will then move on to public comments. This is on agenda items only. If you wish to speak to the board, please come to the podium, state your name, and remember you have a 3-minute time limit.
Howard Jury, address is on file. This is regard to item number 15 on the agenda. I'm hoping for a positive vote on that to split the HR and the legal counsel positions. If you're going to hire an HR manager, there's no need for that person to be just a puppet to the HR director. Let him do his job and let him be a manager. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Neil Kaffenberger, address is on file. I'm really shocked of what I found out this week. I cannot believe that we are paying an attorney to sit in the audience with the residents during a board meeting. For what? What reason? It makes no sense. We got a lawyer right there. That's what his job is. Why do we got one sitting in the audience? It makes totally no sense to me. I don't know why we're going to be flipping a bill for this. It's a total waste of our tax dollars, and it's appalled. I'm really shocked by seeing this. And then with the dividing of the HR counsel part, as I said, when I first disagreed with this position being approved, it should have been not approved. It was going to show a conflict of interest. So far, we've got a couple proofs of interest. We have a letter from an old employee that left mentioning it, how there's a conflict of interest. We have employees signing a petition saying there was a conflict of interest. Let's divide this up, since now that you hired going to be hiring a human resource manager. Let's just divide it up. Let's get this township moving the way it should be. Thank you.
Good evening. John Parkinson, address on file at the clerk's office. First, I'd like to say thank you to every one of you who sit up there and make the tough decisions for the township. Next, I want to talk about item number 15 on the agenda. I hope that when you guys discuss and vote to dissolve the position of HR and general counsel, that you guys would consider we the people who elected you to sit where you're sitting. So when you do that, remember us, because we feel, a lot of the residents feel that is the position's a conflict of interest, and that adding the HR manager position was totally unnecessary, and we'd like to see you guys come together and vote in accordance with us, the residents. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western, and I'm speaking to items 8, 9, and 15. The contract you signed with Thomas Sorty says he has authority, under direction of the Township Supervisor, to contract with outside legal counsel, and such retentions are subject to board review. But it does appear that this board review is always after the fact. And before the fact, there are no dollar limitations being put on any actions he chooses to take, unlike other employees of the township. He can assign any type of work he wants to whomever he wants. The contract language specifies, quote, "The board shall not unreasonably restrict or deny his choices of outside counsel." Why was that provision even seen as necessary, and what do you consider an unreasonable restriction? How is it that he alone can commit the township to significant legal bills without your pre-approval? And even if you see the lack of pre-approval as an appropriate routine, why do you not, as a board, why do you not do a retrospective review of these items? Tonight, you will be considering again hiring Plante Moran for the financial audit. Maybe as a part of the discussion with them, you can build in an audit of the legal bills that's very specific. One example of something that I would like a closer look at is last year, Mr. Assorti approved a $300 bill from Nemeth Law for a letter to be written, ironically enough, to Plante and Moran. When a FOIA was filed for a copy of that letter, the request was denied because the document did not exist. Keep in mind, it wasn't that it was privileged information, it was a statement that the document did not exist. Now, if another one of your department heads paid $300 for something and then decided he didn't need it, would it be okay with you for him to just discard it? If another department head behaved this way, I think that you would be calling the person up. Now, when you get to the Nemeth Law invoice tonight, the one that you're reconsidering, please keep in mind that this is the second invoice in 2019 that is over $6,000. Why is one employee permitted to commit the township to these kind of non-emergency expenses without your prior approval? What did we buy and why? We really look forward to your discussion of these items tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Grabo. Address is on file with the clerk. A number of people have touched on item 15. Ms. Dunn, I'm going to remind you, under MTA, you are the chief legal agent for this township. Do your job, and let's fix this. Bottom line, you're the chief legal agent. It's MTA law. It's required. You need to follow the office that you took an oath for. Fix it.
Anyone else? Very well, then we will move on to the unfinished business, and that is the Nemeth Law invoice. It was postponed from the July 10th meeting. At that meeting, the three top elected officials that are here full-time were instructed to meet and discuss this. We did. We didn't find anything unforeseen in this. We knew it was going to be an expert that was called in because of the unusual circumstances. At this point, I would recommend that we pay this bill. Anyone have any questions?
Madam Supervisor, if I may, I just would like to state my opinion on that. It was not foreseen to me. I didn't agree with it. I still don't believe that it was necessary. So I just want to stand corrected on that statement. But also in that discussion, there was suggestions made at how we can avoid getting into this position again in the future. And my concern is that one department head has the ability to bring invoices to the board after the services have been rendered without pre-approval. So we did discuss that any legal invoices over $5,000 per the purchasing policy will be brought before the board just as any other department head does for those types of instances or purchases or foreseen services that may be needed. So I do think that we're headed in the right direction. It allows things to come before the board so that somebody like myself who would not think that that service was necessary or maybe believe it would be excessive due to the nature of what was being done, I can vote no before it's done. A lot of times the comments made, well, the services have already been done, we have to pay the bill. Well, usually we've had some information prior to that bill getting to the board. So I have expressed my concerns, and I think that we're moving in the right direction to rectify that situation. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if there is no further discussion, I move that we go ahead and pay Nemeth Law for Ms. Gotti's services.
Motion by Ms. Nevers,
Support.
supported by Mr. Krasinski, to pay this invoice.
Madam Chair, can we get a roll call vote on this?
Sure.
But, I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Posey, would you call the roll? Oh, just one second.
I apologize, Madam Chair. I just have one question. So we are now, from what I'm just hearing from you folks, if anything is over $5,000, it comes.
No, we are voting on paying
The bill.
or not paying
Okay.
this bill.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
No.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes, that motion carries. Now, if you want a motion to limit it to the $5,000 mark, then you need to do that.
But that's what you discussed, correct? And
Yep, you
We
can make it a board
discussed it.
action.
okay, then, okay, do we want to discuss that? Does everyone feel, does every other department head have to come to the board, anything over $5,000 to get approval?
Yes. There is a policy that the board has, yes, it's in the purchasing policy.
Okay, then I will make that motion.
Madam Chair, I got a question. If some other votes go or don't go the way that we might think they're going to go tonight, would our HR legal counsel have to have his contract amended? Because that stipulation is not in his contract. Would we have to go back and review his contract and put that $5,000 stipulation into his contract? Because it doesn't sit there right now.
I don't believe it has to be in the contract.
It's
Okay.
if it gets approved, it's a policy enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I second her motion.
Madam Chair, I have a question on this. We put the legal team in there for a reason, is that he knows exactly on every particular occurrence who would be the best to protect the township from any legal liabilities. Now, he just doesn't do that on his own. He has to go through the supervisor and make the supervisor aware of who he is getting. Is he getting Joe, Sarah, whatever that firm is to handle that particular situation? So yes, there is someone on the board that knows about that, and also the 3-time elected officials during the course of the day will possibly be made aware of that. See, it seems kind of odd is that all of a sudden now we're restricting that particular individual because of his knowledge of the legal team or a legal person that's going to be specificity to a particular item to $5,000. And I think that's out of line. I think he has the right judgment. He has the credentials in order to find that right person to do the job. And that protects the township. What you're doing is, why don't we Google search somebody and we'll get the lowest guy. Is that guy going to protect the township for the rest of the time? That's all I'm saying.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
All I'm saying is that that's my opinion on that. That it's always the 3-time elected officials, that's their job of sitting here. Madam Supervisor is under control of that particular position and is always aware of what he is doing. Now, it happened to be that this particular instance, and because of the disdain a couple of board members have for the person, is overwhelming, and I think it's wrong. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just want to put on the record that, tax dollars has nothing to do with my disdain for any person in this township. I was put here for a reason. I was put here to guard tax dollars. Last meeting, I made it a very specific piece of the bill that I had every right to question, and I think everybody should question, about an excessive amount of hours for somebody to sit here. So I don't think that was against a person. It was against that piece of the bill was longer than our meeting. And I have no issues with it, and I don't think it's out of line for any board member to question any taxpayer dollars.
Madam Chair, in response to that, I wasn't questioning anything about that, Tim. I was just making a statement of what he has as far as knowledge of going out to get a legal firm. That's all. It was nothing else than that. You take the affront, Mr. Busno, is that it's an attack on something, and it's not. I'm just telling straight facts. And yes, I do watch the tax dollars. I do that, Mr. Busno. I'm just making you aware of that.
Mr. Kuzminski, you just said that this challenging of this bill was because a couple board members had disdain for the person. You said that. You just did.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add a little caveat. Mr. Assorti has knowledge of specific lawyers who have an expertise in a certain issue. And his choice of Ms. Gotti was twofold. Her renowned expertise in this particular issue, plus she has malpractice insurance coverage, which means if in fact she had not found for the employee, then that employee would have sued and it would have gone to an appeals. The township is out of it, and we don't have to pay for that if that were to happen. Is that not right, Mr. Assorti? Am I stated that properly?
All the attorneys that we hire for the township have malpractice insurance as to their opinions, and if they're wrong, they have malpractice coverage to cover that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I am not saying anything against Mr. Assorti whatsoever about his knowledge, his capability, nothing. It has nothing to do with it at all. You folks sat down and talked. From what I understand, there was a $5,000 with all the department heads. You have to come to the board. Just trying to make it. I'm not after Mr. Assorti and what his capabilities are. Not whatsoever. I'm not.
We did discuss ways where he could cut down the cost if he has to, and he is aware of that and is agreeable to that, to kind of watch the cost of it and try to cut it down. But in his contract, it does give him the ability to use his knowledge to hire whom he wants.
And I'm not.
Maybe more than that. And then you have to stop and think too. Sometimes it would delay things. Sometimes you don't have time to come back to the board. So he has agreed to watch and be considerate of the dollars.
And I'm not doubting that. And this is the first I'm hearing of any of it. And that's where I'm out of the loop, because when you folks have a chance to talk, I'm not aware of what happened until we get here.
Madam Chair, if I may make a statement at this time. So what I'm understanding is it's okay to limit the 11 other directors to follow a policy which it forces them to come before this board, all 7, not just the supervisor, all 7 members, to give us the foreseeable future of the expenses that are going to go against our budget, to give us the time to research, investigate, look into the people that they are contracting out, and to get a board approval for all of their foreseeable work that they have to do in this township. Knowledge has been stated, credentials have been stated, and judgment has been stated. I think all 11 of those 12 department heads, directors, have all of those things as well, but yet we require them to sit in that chair at a board meeting and get approval. They're also required to provide this board with pre-qualified vendors. I have all the belief in the world that Jerry can pick a knowledgeable person to assist in water and sewer and contract the right excavating companies when there's an emergency, but he still has to sit in the chair. I have all the belief in the world that Jim Van Tiffelen does the same when he contracts out to engineering, but he has to sit in that chair and come before the board. And when there's a mistake or there's excessive spending or something we don't agree upon, we have the ability to vote no, or we have the ability to hold them accountable to those decisions. I don't understand why one person doesn't have to do the same. They all have credentials, they all have good judgment, and they all have knowledge of the vendors that they're contracting out to. But there's a policy in place for a reason, so that when a $9,000 bill comes in for an investigation, I could have voted on it prior to it happening, and I can't use the excuse, well, the service has been done, so we have to pay the bill. I think that all of our directors and all of our department heads should follow the same policy that I, as a department head, and I'm an elected official, have to follow. If I went out and I could go get legal counsel for $5,000 to help me with FOIA, for Pete's sakes, because we go round and round about that a lot of times. But I don't, and I wouldn't, and if I did, I'd have to come before the board if it was going to exceed $5,000. So I think we should be consistent with everybody. I don't know why we make the exception for one person who has more knowledge, more credentials, more judgment. I just don't understand that. I don't believe that's the case. So I support Ms. Smith's motion.
I believe a roll call was asked.
Okay.
Requested.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bustineau?
Yes.
Trustee Krasinski?
No.
Trustee Nevers?
No.
Treasurer Goodhue?
No.
And Supervisor Dunn?
No. Motion fails. We will now move on to the Plante Moran engagement letter for the 2019 financial audit. Ms. Mineta, I see you're in the audience. We do this yearly. I believe you're scheduled to start in September sometime, and it will be probably the same format as last year. You bring several people in and they go over different accounts. Okay. Do you have any questions for Ms. Mineta at this time?
Madam Chair, if there's no discussion on this, I move that we go ahead and go with the bill, hiring Plante Moran as the financial auditor for 2019.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Goodhue to authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement for the professional audit services. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Under new business, we have a planning department request to approve the final plan for the enclave at Legacy Estates. Mr. Van Tiffelen, please.
Yes, ma'am. Chairperson, members of the board. The enclave at Legacy Estates is a single-family residential development near the corner of 22 and North Avenue. This consists of 90 units, has been reviewed by all the department heads as well as the Planning Commission, and we are recommending approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the final plan for the enclave at Legacy Estates.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Buswell to approve the final plan for the enclave at Legacy Estates. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Engineering Department has a request to sign the asset transfer agreement between Macomb Interceptor Drain District and Macomb Township. Mr. Van Tiffelen again.
Yes, ma'am. Chairperson, members of the board. The asset that is being transferred is actually a Washington Township asset. There's a sewage meter at the corner of Hayes Road and 23 Mile that serves the vast majority of Washington Township. Their flow comes down Hayes Road and then goes through this meter into Macomb Township. It mixes with Macomb Township flow, eventually gets to 21 and Garfield, where it enters the county's interceptor system. But it all flows through one meter. So essentially you have Washington Township and Macomb Township combined flow going through this one meter. Macomb County currently, and this is based on an agreement that dates back to the 70s when both communities received sewer service, bills Macomb Township for all of the flow, including the Washington Township flow. Water and Sewer then turns around and bills Washington Township for the difference, for the flow that goes through the meter that they have at 23 in Hayes. This has been one of those lingering things that we've been looking into. With the county taking over the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, I contacted them and said it might be time for the county to take over the maintenance of the meter. Currently, the Washington Township maintains the meter. They read the meter. They give us the information. We send them a bill, which isn't consistent with the way the rest of the district is handled. So with this transfer, they would own the meter, they would calibrate the meter, they would read the meter, and they would bill Washington Township directly. Macomb Township would be completely out of it. So the only thing that we're agreeing to here is to get out of the billing business to Washington Township. There's no funds that are being transferred here. There's no asset that's being transferred. I've attached a copy of the agreement. Obviously, the Macomb Intercepted Drainage District has signed it, as well as Washington Township. So it's just up to Macomb Township to approve the transfer so that we can get out of the billing business. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Van Tiffelen?
Madam Chair, hearing no questions, I motion to sign the asset transfer agreement between Macomb Interceptor Drain District and Macomb Township.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Nevers to authorize the supervisor to sign the asset transfer agreement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next is the add-on, and this is permission to execute cost-sharing agreement for design and construction costs with Macomb County Department of Roads for 21-mile center turn lane extension. Mr. Van Tiffelen.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. Back at the end of 2017, Macomb Township sent Macomb County a request for several bypass lanes, center turn lane extensions to try and improve traffic throughout the township. This cost sharing agreement is for one of those projects. This is on 21 mile west of Card Road. This is associated with the Kroger strip center. Particularly the gas station was not accommodated when the original strip center was constructed. We also have issues with the manufactured housing development as well as a condominium there where left turns are very difficult when you're headed westbound when you have a lot of eastbound traffic. So the idea is to extend that center turn lane to accommodate all of those left turns. So the county has been working on this. It was one of those projects that had to be designed. They couldn't just go out and have a contractor install it. So they are now working on it. We've started receiving bills. We typically would have a cost-sharing agreement. In this case, it's a 50-50 split between the county and the township. So Macomb Township's portion is $671,066, and we're recommending approval.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, when is the start and the completion date on that project?
They haven't given us a start or completion date. I think we just received the first bill just recently. I'm guessing they still have a lot of permitting and approval. They may go out to bid this year. It probably is more like a construction for next year.
Okay. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I'll request the permission to execute the cost-sharing agreement for design and construction costs with Macomb County Department of Roads for the 21-mile road center turn lane extension west of Card Road. I believe the residents in that area will be very excited when that happens.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Krasinski to authorize the cost-sharing agreement with the Department of Roads. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Human Resources has a request to hire a purchasing specialist. Mr. Assorti.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the Macomb Township Board of Trustees authorized the Human Resources Department to recruit for a purchasing specialist for the Finance Department. The Human Resources Department received 10 applications for the position. Of those 10 applications, 4 candidates were invited to interview with the selection committee. Those interviews took place on July 9th, 2019. After the completion of those interviews, the selection committee of the supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and Stacy Smith, our finance director, are recommending the candidate of Janet Solomon for hire. So with that, I'd ask for a motion requesting to approve Janet Solomon for hire contingent upon successful completion of post-offer, pre-hire screening, and examinations with an effective hire date on or after August 12th, 2019.
Any questions about the purchasing specialist?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we hire Janet Solomon for the purchasing specialist position upon completion of the pre-requirements.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Nevers to extend this offer of employment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And General Counsel has a request to approve amendment to Chapter 15 of the Code of Ordinances regarding limitations on water use. Mr. Sorge.
Madam Chair and members of the board, as I think everyone is well aware, there's been some issues within the township regarding watering features. After spending some time on talking to all the appropriate department heads, there was some discussion about our current ordinance and the penalties imposed under our current ordinances for not watering within the appropriate times. This request is to change the Code of Ordinances to a violation of the watering time periods as becoming a civil infraction rather than a misdemeanor as it is under current ordinances, with a kind of a general concept that these types of ordinances should be corrective in nature, not necessarily just punitive, meaning the idea being you want it corrected. You don't want to just necessarily take money from everyone. I'm proposing that we amend the ordinances to include for a civil infraction. That would do a couple different things. One, allow us to more freely feel more comfortable about issuing citations if people fail to comply. It would give us the opportunity to provide notices prior to issuing the tickets themselves to give people a chance to take corrective nature. And finally, the funds from the civil infraction comes towards the township more so than the misdemeanors. So with that, you can see that the amendments are in there with regard to the code. Oh, and one additional thing is that with that, we've talked about looking at all of the code of ordinances, all the violations, and specifically municipal civil infractions, and as a township, potentially revising some of those provisions, upping the township's ability to enforce its own ordinances under a municipal civil infraction type of setting versus necessarily just a misdemeanor charge. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but I'd ask that you approve the attached ordinance, and because it is an ordinance amendment, ask for a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Or would recommend that you take a roll call vote.
Any questions on this?
Madam Chair, I just have one question. Mr. Sordi, do you know how often we actually put out a violation ordinance? Is it
a violation ordinance or a violation for the water?
A violation for the current ordinance.
The reason, excuse me for interrupting, but we had a meeting with Mr. Wanglin, and he said that the violations are getting out of control. At first, when the ordinance was enforced, everyone was more conscious of it. Now it's been enforced for several years, and they seem to be disregarding it. So they're watering at all times of the day, which is contrary to the policy that we have.
No, I get that. I was just wondering if we had an idea of how many tickets, violations we've actually, because some people think we never try to enforce it. You know, some residents express it to me. I don't think that's true, but some residents express it to me.
Right now, we probably send out 8 to 10 written via the mail memo ordinance violations daily.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Daily. We're trying our darndest to.
So we're trying
to get the folks to follow this, all for good reason, in an effort to achieve a better water rate.
Also, Jerry, I think you should mention, I mean, the other approaches that your department has taken was the door hangers, and they would get a notice to inform them of the watering times, letting them know that they were in violation. And then when that happened, they'd get a second notice. So they've given residents numerous opportunities to be informed and to make the changes in an attempt to decrease our water rates before any type of citation is issued.
Right. As Supervisor Dunn has stated, when the board approved this ordinance back in 2009, the economy was kind of on a downturn. People were more conscientious. Economy kicked back in, and people still followed it pretty good. You know, in the last year or two, we've seen a tremendous uptick of people just disregarding this. So the approach we've taken is we've sent out, we take two steps, send out two notices via door hangers, a copy of the ordinance, and then on the third notice, if there's a third violation, if the homeowner doesn't change their ways, either myself or my assistant pay a visit personally to that home and try and talk to Mr. and Mrs. homeowner. And it's been quite successful up to about the last year or so. And now it's just come to a point where people are just disregarding it, and that's why my assistant and I met with the three full-times and Mr. Assorti. I think Mr. Van Tifflin was present. You know, we're trying really hard to enforce this, and it's time to put a little more teeth to it, if you will.
Were there more residential accounts, or I'll call them commercial accounts?
The residential accounts are 99% of the violators, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The commercial accounts, my staff has been ordered just to go out there and turn them off.
Okay.
I don't really want to take that approach with Mr. and Mrs. homeowner yet. I want to give them every opportunity to do the right thing.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, just a question. Jerry, do people call in and say homeowner 12345 on Goodwin Street is watering? Do you get a lot of phone calls like that?
I get a little bit of that. I'm very careful with anonymous calls, if you will. I've taken the approach of not giving them much credence.
In case they're going against Mr. Joe or whoever.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, got to be careful with that, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, hearing nothing, I'll make a motion to approve the attached ordinance amendment regarding limitations on the water use.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the amendment. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. That resolution is adopted. No, motion is adopted.
Ordinance amendment.
Ordinance amendment, yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just to let the people know on the outside what this thing is really saying so that they're aware of it, is that a violation could be $100 and no more than $500 on this watering offense that a lot of people don't realize is that this is where we're going because of what the water rates are going. A lot of people don't realize that. So we're going to be going after them, and there's going to be a penalty on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Number 14 is a request to adopt a resolution requesting the State Tax Commission revoke Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate 2016-066 NA 2016-067. Mr. Hickey, you went through all the requirements issued by the state to revoke this? Oh, very well. I understand that they were supposed to start building and they never did anything about it.
They were supposed to start building 2,000 square foot addition. We had 2 years to start that. They
never commenced.
They-
And the other one is they vacated the building.
Okay.
Mr. Hickey, for the record, could you repeat what you said
Yes.
in the microphone?
They were starting a 42,000 square foot addition, which they were required to start within 2 years. They never started at all. The other was a personal property, I.F.T., that they vacated the building.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, Dan, when we do this, how do you want us to address it? Just, do you want us to use the actual number, the ITF, or just?
I think Mr. Assorti drew up the resolution.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I will accept a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the attached resolution requesting the State Tax Commission to revoke the 2 IFT certificates of 2016-066 and 2016-067.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue.
Support.
Seconded by Ms. Nevers to approve this resolution revoking the IFT. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Krzminski?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. This resolution is adopted. Next, we have a trustee's request to discuss and vote to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel. Mr. Busno, you
Yes,
asked for this?
Madam Chair, thank you. Tonight I present to this board a personnel recommendation. Before I present the reasons for my recommendation, I'd like to offer a quote. Ronald Reagan was once quoted as saying, "There are no easy answers, but there are simple answers." Tonight, I offer a simple answer to a not-so-easy problem in our township. I am asking this board to vote to dissolve the dual position of Human Resource Director / General Counsel in our township. I want to make it clear, my statements tonight relate to a position and not a person. The creation and implementation of the position of HR General Counsel has drawn the attention of the courts and media, created division within our community, and created a distrust with our employee groups. We can all easily recall the court when they stated that the discussions of the creation of this position violated the Michigan Open Meetings Act. The higher than norm municipal salary, benefits package, and perks drew the attention of media outlets. Our community has been very concerned about conflict of interest with this position. Employees and their representatives have stated at meetings their concerns with the dual role position. One may ask, why now, Mr. Bussino, do you ask this of the Township Board? Here is my answer. Last meeting, our board, on a 4-3 vote, created the position of HR Manager. That action created the perfect environment to take this action tonight for a couple reasons. The first reason is maybe the most important. Last week's actions, once again, was evidence that a trustee can either place an agenda item or make a recommendation about employee staffing levels in our township. On an organizational chart, the newly created HR manager would fall under the authority of the supervisor. However, the supervisor did not recommend the hire. So precedent was set that a trustee can analyze needs in the supervisor's department. So I thank the board for that precedent. It gave me the green light to proceed tonight. Secondly, last week's actions motivated employer representatives to come in front of this board and claim laws may have been violated by adding the HR manager. Dissolving the HR General Counsel position and proceeding to hire the HR manager will keep us out of harm's way, I think. I've used these words before to this board that I know how to keep us out of harm's way. The first time I was ignored, we were sued and found to be in violation of the Open Meetings Act. Maybe this time I will get the attention of a couple more of my colleagues. What are the other benefits of dissolving the HR General Counsel position? I offer the board, those in attendance, and residents 2 benefits. It eliminates the further dynamics of conflict of interest. I was not sure that there was 100% chance of conflict of interest until recent legal bills. Our HR director made some decisions about an employee that he felt needed outside legal counsel. Then he goes and unilaterally obtains that legal counsel based on his role as general counsel. One of the great principles of our democracy is checks and balances. I don't see one in this dual role. Number two, our community needs to continue to heal. Dissolving this position will do just that. I am ready for any questions.
Any questions? No.
Madam Chair, seeing none, I'd like to motion to dissolve the position of HR General Counsel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bossino, can I ask, and I hate to do this, but can I ask that we postpone this to the next meeting? I have a few questions that I'd still like to get answered. And I did not have time to do that, nor have I had a chance to talk to any of you about it.
I would have no problem with that because it gives us a couple more weeks to pursue the HR manager.
Please. I'd like to make that motion that we postpone this for one meeting till, I don't know the date.
Motion by Ms. Posey.
Support.
Nope. Smith.
Smith. I'm sorry, Ms. Smith. Supported by Mr. Bossino to postpone this till the next meeting.
Till August 14th.
Thank you, Mr. Bossino.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the last item on the agenda is a request to purchase new registration software for the Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Parks and Recreation Department is requesting permission to purchase new registration software for our department. For the past 15 years, we've used RecTrack as our registration software. Within the next year, we'd have to go through a major update to remain with RecTrack. That update would cost $12,217 in addition to our yearly cost of $13,055. We felt that this would be a good time to explore our options. We received quotes from 3 other major providers of software ranging from $5,425 to $46,719. At this time, we're recommending we go with RecPro for $4,525 per year. The 3 major advantages of RecPro are they are located in Clinton Township, so they're local. They will host the program on their server, and there are no startup costs. If we were to purchase the program from RecPro, we would still use RecTrack through the spring of 2020. It will take us at least 6 months for us and RecPro to design and custom fit our specific needs. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, just one. Sal, who else is RecPro doing?
They are doing Sterling Heights, Clinton Township, Battle Creek, Livonia, so some of the bigger ones.
Some of the bigger ones? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Sal.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would move on to recommendation of the Parks and Rec Manager. Director.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Posey to purchase the registration software as requested. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, we have public comments. This is on non-agenda items. If you want to speak to the board, come to the podium, state your name. Remember, there's a 3-minute time limit.
Good evening, Mark Grabo, records on file. I just want to verify, Mr. Carr, you just said that was $4,000 a year, correct?
5,000.
5,000. Thank you. You actually came in front of the board and followed the policy as set by the board. Now, if the 4 of you that are sitting up there remember, you crucified me for a $400 whiteboard as the supervisor. And you're going to sit there today and allow your HR/general counsel, which has a dual position, to spend willy-nilly our money. Part of that counsel's position is HR manager. He should be sitting out here asking permission. Every one of you knows the policy, and that's the way it should be. The 4 of you I'm ashamed of, because you actually slaughtered me for a $400 whiteboard that sits in the supervisor's office that belongs to the township. Instead, you people are spending money for background checks and whatever you're going on for an employee in one of the departments. I can't believe we're spending this kind of money, almost $9,000 of our tax dollars. $9,000 is a darn good payment either towards rec track or maybe a bridge that you got closed. Let's get with the program. You guys have spent how much money out of general fund in the last year and a half that you've dropped general fund from, I don't know, 26 million down to 10 million? You've bought property like crazy when you don't need it. You got 180 acres. Get on it. Let's use it. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The township owns 90 acres. You guys keep blowing away, sliding past it. Freedom Hill was built on a dump. We got 90 acres sitting there, useless. Let's do something with it that's creative. Instead, you guys are spending millions of dollars on property that we don't need. You're taking that property off of the tax rolls of this township for the benefit. What are you going to do? Raise the property taxes so that you can compensate for the property you took off the tax rolls to put into parks and recs when you've got plenty of property already? 2020 can't come fast enough. And boy, let me tell you, with what's going on up here, there's some questionable items. I got a feeling those boys between downtown and Garfield are far from being done.
Anyone else?
Our jury address is on file. Christie, just want to set the record straight a little bit. I appreciate everything that you're trying to do up there, along with Tim. But then one other thing in your notes, your minute notes from the last meeting. It was stated at the last meeting by a building official, Joe Maples. He corrected me that said that the fees and permits were paid by Mr. Bucci for his driveway. Unfortunately, they weren't paid to that following Monday. The work was already done before he even pulled the permits or paid the fees. So he kind of like, okay, I got caught, now I'm going to go pay it. It's kind of what this board does a lot. Just kind of overlooks and oversees and kind of turns the other way until you get caught and then you backtrack. The fees and the permits were not paid until after the work was done. So how was the inspection done on it? He walked out there and looked and said, oh yeah, you got concrete down. Okay? All I know, Dino could have buried another $66,000 in his driveway. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Joseph O'Connor. I'm a representative from the Michigan Association of Firefighters. For those of you that don't know me, I represent the paid-on-call firefighters and the dispatchers in their union. Earlier in June, just prior to June 10th, the union was made aware of the township's intention to lay off the dispatchers sometime in the fall. We were told that prior to the layoffs taking place, applications would be made available for the affected dispatchers. The equipment to facilitate the changeover would be up and running. On June 10th, I appeared before this board and voiced our concerns and our displeasure with the pending layoffs. On July 9th, the union had a meeting with Fire Chief Phillips on unrelated matters, and nothing was mentioned about the layoffs. On July 19th, we had another meeting with Chief Phillips. And at the end of this meeting, the chief advised the union that the layoff notices were being mailed out today and effective August 1st. This is less than 6 weeks after being told the layoffs were going to be held in the fall. And the dispatchers were given less than 2 weeks notice of the pending layoffs. Since that time, there's been no applications for these dispatchers to apply for any open positions anywhere. This week, Monday, on July 22nd, my executive board and myself met with Mr. Assorti, voiced our concerns of these layoffs that were pushed from the fall into the midsummer. As I said, there's no applications that have been made available, and the equipment that's supposed to be in place is not in place and is not up and running. And our question to Mr. Assorti is, why is the rush? Mr. Assorti indicated to me that he wanted to talk to the chief regarding the pending layoffs and discuss this matter a little bit further. The union is requesting that the board give Mr. Assorti the opportunity to meet with the chief, discuss the implementation of the layoffs, and postpone the August 1st deadline. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. In a few minutes, this board will consider item number 17 to go into closed session. There will presumably be a motion, likely followed by a second. I know that your parliamentary procedures frequently go off the rails, but the usual cadence in a meeting that adheres to proper procedures is motion, support, discussion. Motion, support, discussion. This requires that the person chairing the meeting or her parliamentarian, after acknowledging the motion and support, stops and asks, is there any discussion? We have a motion and support on the floor. So I hope that you will have a discussion tonight after your motion and support to go into closed session about the necessity and the appropriateness for entering this closed session. Public policy matters should be deliberated in public. Item 17 is about development and zoning issues, but the phrase written legal opinion has been tagged on to the lead of that, and it looks like subterfuge for going into closed session. We've seen this repeatedly, but perhaps tonight you will stay in open session long enough to inform the residents about what legal opinion you are seeking from Mr. Assorti, and perhaps who wrote it. Mr. Assorti, as transcribed from the videotape of a recent meeting and published in the Gazette newspaper, said this about his written legal opinions, quote, I, as the township attorney, will not discuss a written legal opinion in open session. I am telling you, I don't like to give legal opinion out front in an open session. You are going to have to waive the attorney-client privilege. If that's the board's vote, that's fine. I'm not going to do it. End quote. Now, as useful as it might be for an employee to announce to you ahead of time his intention to be insubordinate, I suggest that this is not appropriate. It's up to you whether you back down or you require him to follow your directives. But if you are not willing to do that, why don't you tonight ask Mr. Assorti for his verbal legal opinion? Just tell him he doesn't need to write it down, so there is no reason to go into closed session. Thank you.
John Parkinson, address is on file at the clerk's office. One question. Mr. Assorti, if you could answer this for me. Do you consider yourself a public official? You don't have to answer that right now. I'd ask the board to consider his position as a public official, as he is the HR director and he is our general counsel for Macomb Township. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very well, then we will move on to trustees' comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just got two quick things. I just wanted to as always, thank every resident for coming forward and expressing their First Amendment rights. And even if you're not a resident and representing one of employee groups, thank you for participating in our government. I do want to address one thing, that the driveway was brought up. I want to give some background on that. I am in no means defending this person, but I got a little background knowledge of it. When that driveway that was mentioned was getting poured, many residents contacted me and the township. It's probably not the first person, I could not get a hold of Mr. Maples. I talked to another township employee. They had heard too that the driveway was getting poured. In their defense, they immediately went out there and said, some permits need to be pulled. And I have to make sure that we understand that in this case, I really think the township employees did their due diligence to make sure that that driveway was going to get addressed. You know, again, those same residents that brought it to the attention, even on social media, were the same residents that contacted the township. And again, I think our building department did their job with that. But the other thing, I just want to compliment our clerk. I'm hearing that not every FOIA these days is getting charged to residents, so I'm glad that you charge residents when they need to be charged, and you don't charge them when they don't need to be charged. You know, pulling an email in 30 seconds probably shouldn't be a cost onto residents. So thank you for charging appropriate times. Thank you.
Anyone else? No.
Madam Chair, if I may. At the last meeting, I made a statement that since the library is going to be coming into the square, that we shall now focus on the last piece of land that is open. I'd like to make a motion that Madam Chair create a committee to research of putting a community center in the last piece of land in the township square.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. I would like to make a motion that Madam Chair create a committee to research of putting a community center in the last piece of land in the township square.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
I'll support that.
Supported by Ms. Nevers to
Create a committee.
Investigate the possibility of a community center.
Correct.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion carries.
Also, Madam Chair, if I may, for the residents that put their respective tattered flags in the lobby in the blue container, I have them and will deliver them to the Vietnam Veterans 154 of Clinton Township for proper disposal. One other item also, Madam Chair, I'd like to respond to Mr. Grayball, that 90 acres up, I think belongs to SMDA, and it's not really ours. So I don't think we can do anything on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Very well, we'll move on to Treasurer's Comments.
Yes. We are having a good support of people sending in their summer tax bills already. And we have been hearing from our residents that they're very appreciative that they are able to pay them in partial payments. They still have to abide by the payment dates of July 1 through September the 14th without penalty, but they are allowed to break it up to, I've been telling them divide it into 3 different months and pay it off that way, or if they want to do it per pay. They're appreciative because usually the summer bill is a little bit higher. So people are taking advantage of that, and hopefully it'll help them out. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Clerk's Comments.
I just want to reiterate a few things that were mentioned earlier with regards to the conversation that was had. Trustee Krasinski had indicated that, the 3 full-time are here and they should be informed, and we are informed. I'm just letting every resident out there know that I'm not informed. The meeting we did have, but in that meeting it was discussed that it was actually recommended by the supervisor that the legal bring before the board anything over $5,000. So what happens is we meet, those things are discussed, we depart, that's where I think we're at, and then we show up at a board meeting and it's as if the conversation didn't happen at all. So I'm concerned for the taxpayer dollars. I'm concerned for myself as a board member that if we allow one person not to follow the purchasing policy, how do we enforce it for the other 11 directors that have to come before the board? It's concerning. How do we hold anybody accountable to the purchasing policy, and how does the new purchasing specialist enforce a policy that we don't enforce upon everybody? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Under Supervisor's Comments, if you remember, I was instructed to obtain outside legal counsel from the list that was submitted by Ms. Smith for the investigation of the grievance filed against the HR director / legal counsel. At 4:16 this afternoon, I received an email of the results of that investigation. There was not time to review it thoroughly. Outside legal counsel did stress during a phone conversation that this is an attorney-client privileged document, unless the board decides otherwise at a subsequent board meeting. After I've had a chance to review it thoroughly, you are free to stop by and pick up a copy or send a request to have it transferred electronically. The other thing I have to say is, Mr. Kaffenberg, I believe you were talking about Mr. Kuzmano, who's in the audience and is a resident. We do not pay him. The only attorney that gets paid is Mr. Sorty. So I don't know why you think we pay him. We do not. That's all I have for this evening. We have one item to discuss in closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by, who made the motion?
Goodhue.
Ms. Goodhue, supported by Mr. Krasinski to adjourn to closed session. Would you call the roll?
Madam Chair, if we may, since it's been brought to our attention, Mr. Assorti, could you expand on the legal opinion for which we're going into closed session?
There was an issue raised regarding the liability of the township relative to certain decisions that have been made on development and zoning issues, and I have an opinion for the board to discuss under the attorney-client privilege what the liability of the township is.
So can I ask a follow-up question, Madam Chair? So is this a written opinion about pending litigation against the township?
It's not. That's why it's presented under 15268H, which is different from pending litigation.
Any other questions? Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Bustino?
No.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Adjourn to closed
Adjourn to
session.
closed session. Returned from closed session. Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, closed session was for informational purposes only.
Thank you. That concludes the business for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Busno to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. We are adjourned.